What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I want to break down what's happening with the overall market moving forward as we're seeing some new developments on the charts. Not to mention a big shift in Tesla as we have big data for tomorrow. But just notes that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. Anyways, for Tesla, we had a high on August 20th, and since then we've been making lower highs, continuing to downtrend, and we saw Tesla dip quite a bit. But the question is, will Tesla try to bounce from here or not? Whether or not that happens depends on the PCE data report for tomorrow. I just want to call out that Tesla has this wedge that's been forming, and we'll be watching to see if Tesla could try to get a breakout or not from here. So this is going to be very, very key, at least for the price action. So for Tesla, we have this zone of resistance approaching around this 210 area if we do get back above this wedge. And also, if we end up dipping, we're going to be looking at this 205 area as well. Now, whether or not we get a bounce will depend a lot on some data. So I want to first talk about that before I break down these charts. But today was very, very interesting nonetheless. So firstly, what happened today was we had some new data come out for the GDP numbers, which caused the market to launch upwards temporarily, but then the market ended up dumping. So it just goes to show that pieces of data could cause the market to move a lot. Now, tomorrow, it's going to be Friday, August 30th, 2024, the last trading day of August, the last trading day of the month, and also the last trading day until a long weekend, because the market's going to be closed on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Monday is going to be Labor Day, so the market's not going to be trading then. And by the time we open again after Friday, it's going to be September. So the last day of August for trading is tomorrow. 1 hour before the market opens, we have the PCE data report coming out, which is very, very pivotal for the markets. This is heavily dictated by CPI, and this is the Fed's preferred inflationary measure. I gave you guys a warning about this in my previous video. So this is going to be very important. We're expecting the data to be pretty much the same as what we got the last time on a month over month and year over year basis. So that's going to be key. Then after that, after we get the PCE data at 9:45 a.m., we have the Chicago PMI. That's 15 minutes after market open, followed by the Michigan consumer sentiment data 30 minutes after open. That's also going to be somewhat impactful, might cause some volatility. So we'll see what happens with the PCE data report. This is going to be super big, and we'll see what that leads to. Now, for other factors involving the markets, just notes that CPI has been decent all along. And I'm not saying that the data is 100% real or I trust it. I'm simply stating that this is what the reports are telling us. The data has been decent, which is what has been incentivizing the Fed to be more dovish, which is why Jerome Powell implied that a cut is most likely coming. So, once again, because CPI has been decent on a core basis and all items basis for the month of July, when PCE data comes out for tomorrow, it's going to most likely be decent, and that's a good sign for the market. So the market may actually like the data. Now, one thing worth mentioning is that right now, there's a 67% chance we get a 25 basis point cut and a 33% chance we get a 50 basis point cut. So the market's expecting a cut for September 18th in about 2.5 weeks for FOMC. This is going to be dictated, the probabilities will be dictated by the data coming out for tomorrow. So we'll see if this shifts. That's why it's going to cause some volatility in the markets. Something else worth mentioning is that tomorrow for August 30th, we have over 500,000 calls expiring, and we have over 1.5 million puts expiring for a 548 being max pain and a 2.87 puts to call ratio. It's pretty crazy so far. Will the market makers cause a dump or not? If we end up losing 555 on SPY, we could be dipping to 548, which is where max pain happens to be, or the exact opposite could happen depending on what we see from data. So be very, very mindful of that. On top of this, greed is making up the majority of sentiment. Momentum still remains greedy as there are still buyers defending us. And we got a green close, at least for many of these tickers. The 5-day average for the puts and call option positioning is at greed. This basically signifies that there's a lot of greed in the markets. There's not as many people entering shorts for the short term. The market's still indecisive. The overall positions have a lot of puts open, but for the last 5 days, people are not opening as many puts. They're actually kind of neutral right now and taking their time. People are like very indecisive about the markets. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. The VIX is also neutral. So I'll be talking more about that later. Now, there's some news coming out. The Model Y refresh, it could be planned for Q1 of 2025, according to supply chains. That's going to be big for Tesla. This is going to incentivize a lot more sales. I can't wait to see what it looks like if this ends up being the case. But this is what reports are suggesting. I wouldn't necessarily say that the timing is 100% confirmed, but if this ends up being the case, good news for Tesla, in my opinion. Now, there are other headlines coming out about how executives are asking Canada to essentially lower tariffs for many commodities, especially for the Chinese EVs. And besides that, I didn't really see too much news come out. Besides one more good piece of news, William Blair has come out and they're saying that Tesla's going to outperform the market. They mentioned this because they think that the energy storage business is going to be big, and they're very excited to see what Tesla announces for revenue growth. So that's a good piece of news that came out for Tesla. The price pairs ratio is also dipping a bit as the market is once again holding up. Tesla's still showing some weakness despite that. So, Tesla still has some weakness relative to the markets. 49% of the time on Fridays we're green, and we tend to see more volatility at 1 p.m. and also during the final hour of the day. And besides that, tomorrow's the last day of August. Tesla tends to be green only about 46% of the time in August. So that's going to be very important to note. This is what history kind of tells us. August is not usually a good month for Tesla, and hasn't been that great of a month thus far. 62 million has been what volume tends to be. That's not bad. It's going up a little bit. So now the question remains, what's going to happen to the markets, in my opinion? I just want to focus on the charts. So for Tesla, it's very simple. If we break upwards, you're looking at this trend line of resistance around this 207 area. If we break through that, we're looking for 210 and then 212. If we hold above 212, we will turn back to bullish potentially if we close above that for 2 sessions in a row. If we're bearish, you want to see Tesla basically lose 205 and then retest 202. So I'll be watching to see how this ends up going. Now, the 4 hour is showing some life that Tesla wants to rebound a little bit. So I think that's tomorrow with PCE data coming out, Tesla's going to attempt to push higher, but the overall market might not allow that to last forever because Tesla could still dip lower if the market gets a rejection. So I think what's going to happen tomorrow, this is my prediction. Once again, I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know for sure what PCE is going to be. So my prediction can't always be perfect. So please give me some slack in case, something goes south. But I just want to say that there's a very good chance that tomorrow PCE is going to be decent because CPI has been good. And I think that it's going to help Tesla push a little bit towards the 210 area. And we may go a little bit higher, very close to our 200 EMA. And then there might be another move, just like what we saw today, a little bit of a dip coming. And we might be making our way back down to 205. So a pump and dump is what I predict is most likely going to happen. And then I think that we'll see what kind of reaction we get at resistance. Well, that's the most likely case, in my opinion. As far as SPY goes, we're completely range bound. What I mean is every time we hit 562 to 563, SPY has rejected. Every time we hit 555, we are getting bought back up. There was one exception, which is Nvidia's earnings, which caused a big dump, only for us to get bought back up. So the market is still range bound. Now, one thing people are calling out is the fact that we have a head and shoulders like structure developing on SPY, which could lead to more downside. We'll see about that. I'm not going to make any promises. You want to look at price action just to get those levels determined, if anything. If we break past 563, we're looking for 565. If we close above 563, that's going to be a sign of strength. If we lose 555, we're going to be looking for a big jump to about 548 if we close below 555 at least 2 days in a row. In my opinion, we're just range bound for now. But tomorrow when the data comes out, we're going to be looking at resistance at 560. And if that breaks, we're looking for 562. Supports at 558, followed by 555. I think we're going to pop tomorrow morning, push into the 560 area, maybe a little bit above that, and then there might be a rejection coming and a move back down, and we might slowly make our way down to the lowest of the day. I find that's to be the most likely possibility. ES has a very, very similar structure. We like to reject off 56.50, and we like to get bought up around 55.80. We've been going back and forth and back and forth. We could rebound for that 56.30 area, and then we could reject and start dipping lower. So I'll be watching to see if there's a pop and drop. But with the head and shoulders like structure developing on ES, I am seeing some weakness developing, and we'll see how things end up going. So I think we may push a little bit for 56.40 tomorrow, and then there could be a rejection back down as we remain range bound on ES. And if we lose the lows, there's going to be a dip. Keep in mind there's a head and shoulders developing on SPY and ES. Sometimes they play out, sometimes they don't. You never know, guys. It depends on levels. So we'll just be very patient and see if the market turns. For Nvidia, we look a little bit more bearish on Nvidia. So what happened was we dumped really hard yesterday. Despite the fact that earnings was pretty good, we had good earnings. The buyback was announced. They did good when it comes to guidance, but despite that, the share price dumped. It rebounded a bit, only to continue to dip. So if we lose 117 and close below that 2 days in a row, we're going down to 115, and eventually this gap support 110. We also have resistance at 122 and 120. I think what's going to happen is we rebound to about 120, maybe the low 120s, especially with this imbalances. Then we could reject and start dipping lower and start dipping to much lower levels. I presume that's the most likely possibility for Nvidia, a little pop and drop like move as the share price looks more bearish and we're making lower lows. The daily also looks kind of weak on it. I'll go over that in another video. For Bitcoin, this could be forming a head and shoulders. So you want to be kind of careful with this. I think that we might rebound it tomorrow towards 60,000. Then we could reject and continue to dip lower. We're looking at 58,000 support, not to mention 56,900. Look for a pop and drop as the most likely possibility. We'll see how things go from there. For others out there like NQ, for those who are interested in futures, the Nasdaq is looking a little bit more bearish. NQ is continuing to dip right here as we're making lower highs. We could rebound tomorrow morning to retest 19,500. We got to break 19,700 to turn back to bullish. I don't think we're going to do that. If we end up losing and we don't hold above 19,400, we're going to be dipping back down to the low 19,000s. So those are your levels. I think we might rebound to about 19,500, then dip, and then we might see a pop and drop just like what we saw from today going into tomorrow. The QQQ is technically on a downtrend, making lower highs, but we haven't lost critical support. We're still holding our 200 EMA. If we lose 468 and close below, that's 2 times in a row. We're going to be looking for a big dip down to 464 again, if not below that. And if we end up breaking past basically 477, if we hold above that, I think we could turn back up. I think what's going to happen is we rebound tomorrow morning, retest 474 or so, if not 475. Then we could reject and start dipping lower, and there might be a dip coming. For Apple may be doing something very similar. We tried to push in the morning. It's about 232, only to reject. We're going to be looking at 230 as key supports. If we lose this, we're going to be dipping down to 228. If we hold this, look for 232 again. This looks like with the red bar forming, it might dip lower. It might pop tomorrow with PCE, then maybe slow down. And we still have this gap to fill below. So I presume we're going to be coming back down to fill that. So I think we might pop first and dip. And I think that's the most likely possibility. For a few more, we also have Palantir. Just want to call this out real quick. Palantir is building some strength right now because of the fact that it's holding up nicely. Watch 31.5 as resistance and then 32. Watch support at 30.8. If we lose that, we dip. I think that because we're holding support, there's a good chance we're going to try to push higher for 32 plus, and we'll see if you reject off that or not. But look for a little bit of a push tomorrow, at least for the time being, just to see how things end up developing. For Supermicro, the 4 hours looking more bullish as we're trying to rebound. Now, what generally happens is you test previous support becoming resistance. So that's going to be this 480 area. I think we might be trying to push for 480 tomorrow, and then we'll see if we reject off that or not. If it rejects off 480, we're going to be returning to 450. If we break 480, we're looking for a push for 500. So look for a push tomorrow morning. Likely because of PCE or the overall market. I'm going to be looking at that 480 area. If it breaks that, we're looking for 500, so we'll see how things end up going. That's going to be pivotal for the way the market ends up developing. For Rivian, we have a high here. We came down with the big red bar only to establish a big rejection candlestick. We're looking at 14.06 as support. If we lose that, we're looking for 13.92 and then even lower levels. If we're bullish, we want to break past 14.8. Looking at the structure on Rivian after getting this rejection, I presume we're going to be dipping to about 13.9 tomorrow. We may push a bit to the 14.25 area first and then start dipping to the 13.9s. So look for a pop and drop and a potential dip as the most likely possibilities. For SoFi, we look more bullish. We had a very, very nice inverse head and shoulders, and we got a nice bounce instead. So we're going to be looking at resistance basically at this 8.04 area. If that breaks, we're looking for 8.14, followed by the highs that we saw today. If we end up losing 8, we're looking for a dip back down to at least 7.8, followed by this imbalance fill at 7.5. I think what's going to happen is we rebound a little bit. We push higher for 8.13 or so, and then we could reject and start dipping lower, back down towards 7.8. So look for a pop and drop, a little push, then a rejection as the most likely possibilities, and we'll see what develops after that, in my opinion. For other factors out there, we have the IWM Russell 2000. In my opinion, one thing I just want to say is that the Russell is doing a good job at holding up. So we have this trend line. See this trend line? We bounced off this, bounced off this, bounced off this, bounced off this. We're holding the big whites trend line very, very well. So as long as we hold this, I think we could be trying to uptrend for that 222 target. If we lose this, we're going to be looking for 216 and eventually lower levels like this imbalance fill for 214. But as of right now, we're holding this. So for the time being, we might just try to push for 220 just for the time being. I'm not saying it's going to last forever. Just for now, I think we might be pushing for 221. So we're doing a good job at holding up. For AMD, AMD is making lower highs to rejecting. It may attempt to rebound. I think we could be looking for a retest of 148s tomorrow. If we could break that, we could get closer to 152. And if we end up losing support, we're looking for 142. If 144-ish breaks, we're looking for 142, followed by the lows from yesterday. So I think we might rebound a little bit. We might be testing 148, and we'll see if we get a big rejection or not. we have another resistance that's now kind of like building right here from this high to this. We'll see how we end up reacting like this. Look for a retest of our key EMAs, and we'll see if we reject here. I'll be very, very patient with this nonetheless, just to see how this develops. But for the time being, we're going to be focusing more on this trend line. This is going to be our next resistance that's kind of like building. So we'll see how things end up going, at least from here. But that's going to be key, at least for us for now. So look for a little rebound towards the EMAs, and we'll see if we reject. That's going to be pivotal, and we'll be very, very patient nonetheless. For ARM basically, if we reject and we end up losing 131.5, we're looking for 129, and our bullish case will take us up to 136. I think what's going to happen is we're going to try to push higher for that 135 area, and we'll see if we reject or not, but that's going to be very, very key. So look for a little bit of a push higher for 134, and we'll see if we get a rejection and a move back down to 129. We have this nice looking potential structure right over here. This could be leading to a rejection on the 4 hour. Look for a rebound, then a rejection, and we'll see how things end up going. For Coinbase, Coin is rejecting and we're starting to dip. We're looking for basically 188 as our support. If we lose 188 on Coin, we're going to be dipping to this imbalance towards 182. And if that fails, we're going to be filling this gap for 178. We also have resistance at 192, not to mention 197. So we have to be very, very careful. In my personal opinion, I think that we might be dipping to fill the gap on Coin, but I don't know how long it's going to take. It may take a week, may take a few days. That's very dependent on how long it takes for us to lose 188. So watch for this to be tested tomorrow. We might rebound depending on PC, then start dipping. But this structure looks more bearish to me because we're rejecting, making lower highs and lower lows, and losing these supports right over here. So this makes me think that we're gonna eventually come down to the next support down here. And I favor that as the most likely case. This is where this gap support happens to be, followed by the gap fill. So I think I favor downside, a little pop and drop, and then we'll see how we develop from there. For Amazon, this is very mixed. It's trying to rebound in one direction, but then it's simultaneously struggling to break past our resistance. So if we break 174, we're going to be looking for 176. If we fail to do so, we're looking at this support at 170. I think what's going to happen is we push higher for about 174 tomorrow. If we don't break it, we might be coming back down for a rejection. So it's going to be a big test on Amazon if we break 174 or not. I think we might reject and start dipping, though, despite us trying to break it, because we keep rejecting every time we make these bounces. So I favor a bounce and a rejection, but just to be safe, we'll watch for confirmation. For Meta is doing something very similar to Amazon. Every time we pop, we're kind of like rejecting as well. So I think that there's a good chance of us also dipping on Meta. Meta has resistance at 520 and 524, and we have key support right here around 515, not to mention the low at 512. I think we might be pushing higher for that 521 area. Then we could reject and start dipping lower all the way down for 515 and then, even below that. But notice that we popped and rejected, popped and rejected, popped and rejected, popped and rejected. It keeps doing that. So I would presume that it's going to do the same thing again. Here we kind of like pop a bit and reject and start dipping back down to these imbalances. For Microsoft, same thing as Meta. We popped and rejected, popped and rejected, popped and rejected. This is why the NASDAQ is showing more weakness than SPY and the QQQ. This is the reason. I'm sorry. This is why the Nasdaq and QQQ are showing more weakness than SPY and ES. Let me just clarify what I was trying to say. Sorry about that, guys. But anyways, we are starting to reject on Microsoft. If we hold above 415, we could technically try to rebound, but if we don't do so, I see us tipping to about 410 and eventually 408. So I presume we're going to pop a bit to 415, then reject and start tipping for that 409 target. For Google, it's the same thing essentially. We're kind of rejecting right over here. Look for 165 as resistance and then 166. And if we fail, we're looking for 162 followed by 160. So I think what's going to happen is we rebound a little bit for 165 to 166. I think we rebound a little bit and then we could be looking for rejection lower. It's looking more bearish because every time we pop, we reject, we popped, rejected, popped, rejected, popped, rejected. So there's a good chance that's going to be the case right over here. For DJT is rejecting as well. We need to break above 21 to turn back up. Otherwise, we're going to continue to sink. So I think there's a good chance this may continue to dip. So watch for that. For the VIX, we have like a double top like structure. We're kind of dipping right here. One thing worth mentioning is that the VIX could dip a little bit lower, but we have this big gap over here to fill. So there's going to be another spike coming. We might dip a little bit because maybe the market rebounds a bit thanks to PCE, but then there might be another spike coming. The market could get a rejection later. So you want to be very careful with that. The 10 years kind of flat, not really doing much. It may be affected by PCE, however, that affects the Fed's policies. And the dollar has an inverse head and shoulders. So we'll see how this ends up going. from the way I see things, I'm a little bit concerned about this. What could be happening is this. This is just a theory, guys. I'm not going to promise anything solely based off this, but this is like our left shoulder, right? And then what could be happening is this whole thing is our head, right? And then we could be dipping tomorrow to form our right shoulder. Maybe the market rebounds a little bit, unless this is the right shoulder, and then we could be looking for a move back up to the dollar. Whether the right shoulder is in or not, if this is it or not, it depends. But then if the dollar dips a little bit, maybe the market rebounds just temporarily. We see SPY hit the low 560s. And then if this takes off, that could mean that the market may get a rug pull soon. So that could be very, very big. We'll watch and see if that ends up being the case. So as far as Tesla goes, every time we pop a rejecting and Tesla is on a bit of a downtrend right now, we are technically favoring the downside. We may rebound tomorrow and then reject depending on PCE. But for now, that is what the trend is suggesting. So I just want to be very unbiased when I say that. For now, we are popping and dropping every time, and Tesla is still favoring the downwards direction for the time being. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. I'll be back tomorrow before the market opens to talk about PCE. Until then, have a great day, night, or evening, wherever you guys are around the world, and I'll see you guys very soon on the next one. Thank you for listening, and peace out.